So what happens when you take the enormous battles of Dynasty Warriors, the constantly evolving builds of Hades, the bloody Scottish nationalism of Braveheart, and then throw a demonic meteorite into the middle of it? Apparently, you get Tears of Metal. Developed and published by Montreal-based independent studio Paper Cult, the team behind Bloodroots, Tears of Metal is a cooperative hack-and-slash roguelike set on a fictional Scottish island that has been invaded following the arrival of a mysterious object known as the Dragonstone. The invading army has begun mining the meteor for weapons, armour, and supernatural power. Of course they have. Leaving Scotland's most dependable problem-solving technique is the only remaining option, gathering several hundred angry men and making a beeline for the English. But don't worry, it's your responsibility to politely request that they stop. Very politely. The main character of this game is William Wallace. Yes, that William Wallace. Well, no, not the historically accurate one. Not that one either. There we go. That one. This William Wallace leads a small army of Scottish soldiers into enormous battles containing quite a lot of enemy troops, some really damn annoying captains, defensive structures, and bosses, who are somehow easier to fight than the normal captains. Anyway, the basic combat follows the Muso formula, which, for all of you who don't know, is the genre of games where one angry geezer absolutely steamrolls an entire army. In short, you run into groups of enemies large enough to be mistaken for the line to Bonnie Blue's bedroom, and begin swinging your weapon until the local population has been substantially reduced. Look at this. There are hundreds of disgusting Englishmen here. Wait a minute. Luckily, the enemy has adopted the traditional action game strategy of surrounding the protagonist and then patiently waiting for their appointment to be... Hold on, let me check through the calendar here. Ah, yes, to be stabbed. What separates Tears of Metal from a normal Muso game is its roguelike campaign structure. If you're a fan of roguelikes, then you can skip this bit because you know what I'm about to explain. Basically, this game will send you across a branching map containing different types of battles, merchants, special encounters, and bosses. During the run, you collect emblems and artifacts that can completely alter your build, giving you effects such as poison, chain damage, beams of light, and my personal favourite, straight up fucking explosions. The game currently features more than 100 artifacts that can be combined into different builds. So, you might begin a campaign as a relatively normal angry Scottish man with a sword, but then, 40 minutes later, you're firing divine lasers from your arse while everyone within 30 meters explodes. It's fucking sick. And it's historically accurate. William Wallace could really do this. Your soldiers also gain permanent upgrades between campaigns, meaning the army fighting beside you gradually becomes stronger. You can recruit new companions, improve your settlement, buy permanent upgrades, and discover new heroes and more powerful weapons. One minute you're cutting through an occupying army, the next you're deciding whether Dave from the barracks deserves a 4% increase to his maximum health. He does. Dave has been through a lot. You can also play the game in 4-player co-op, with every player controlling their own hero and battalion, which I am yet to experience because the game
is only on PC!
The early access release contains the game's complete central progression loop, 3 acts with their own enemies and bosses, 3 playable heroes, village development, companions, and lots of equipment. Paper Cult currently expects the early access period to last between 4 and 12 months, with additional heroes, upgrades, voice acting, balancing changes, and performance improvements planned along the way. However, Paper Cult says the game can already be played from beginning to end. The early access period is primarily being used to expand the content and refine the experience using community feedback, which is great. And so far, the community seems to be really enjoying it. At the time of writing, Tears of Metal holds a very positive Steam rating, with 87% of its first 600 user reviews recommending the game. That number will almost certainly have changed by the time this video releases. Future me, that is your problem. Steam user CDB Sora, who says they played around 100 hours during the private playtest, described the concept as Dynasty Warriors but in Scotland is just a slam dunk. They also said a lot more, but we don't have time for that. But honestly, yeah, that sentence has effectively completed my entire review. Video over. No, come back! Steam user HiddenMan14 praised the artwork, combat, enemy variety and co-op, describing the game as Dynasty Warriors Scotland, while Twisp offered a slightly more efficient assessment, Scottish roguelike Dynasty Warriors. Very cool. Great aesthetic. Steam reviews truly are one of humanity's greatest literary achievements. The reaction hasn't been purely positive though. Wade, by the way, enjoyed the combat initially, but felt that it became too reliant on the same basic combo, while also criticising the upgrades and certain enemy attacks. This one I very much agree with. Another player, Fedbia, enjoyed the game but begged the developers to add a way to save between rounds, writing, "Kids, work, life. I can't no life this game." Oh, psh, ridiculous! Just abandon your family. Scotland needs you. So, Tears of Metal appears to have an excellent central idea, a fantastic visual style, and a combat system capable of turning several hundred human beings into environmental decoration. But it also is an early access game that has only just arrived. The balance is still being adjusted, the amount of variety has already been questioned, and some important quality of life features are currently missing. So, let's gather the clans, reclaim the island, and find out whether Tears of Metal is worth playing. I knew absolutely nothing about this game coming into it. I hadn't watched or even seen a trailer come out for it, followed its development, or even heard another human being actually mention it. But then I saw it on Game Pass, and then I saw it on Twitter, and then the Opera GX news page. So, by that point, I had accepted that some higher power, or an unusually aggressive marketing algorithm, had decided it was my time to play Tears of Metal. So, in the interest of not angering whichever incomprehensible entity was controlling my browser, I checked out the store page, and the dope-ass, gorgeous art style immediately had me. I love games that actually look unique, rather than setting for the traditional visual style of realistic man standing in realistic mud. Don't get me wrong, I do love the fact that games can detail dogshit on a photorealistic level, but I don't want all of my games to look like that. Now, I'm a very simple creature. You can give me the most mechanically bankrupt game ever conceived, but place a sword in my hands and I immediately like your game so much more. You could make fucking HMRC tax return simulator, but as long as I'm allowed to parry an accountant, we're looking at a potential Game of the Year contender. But despite the intrigue of slaughtering 50 enemies in one swing like Dynasty Warriors, Tears of Metal does not immediately transform you into the physical manifestation of Scottish rage. Because this is a roguelike, becoming powerful enough to convert an entire army into red paste is the destination, not the starting point. Don't get me wrong, I mean, you're still considerably more capable than the regular soldiers fighting beside you. But during the tutorial and your first few encounters of a run, William Wallace feels less like an unstoppable force of nature and more like a very skilled combatant. The game begins by teaching you its relatively simple combat system. You have your standard bum-ass 3-swing light combo, a heavy attack, and another combo consisting of 2 light attacks followed by a heavy. Truly revolutionary stuff. You can also dodge, block, and stab by holding the block button while pressing the light attack. And because every melee combat system legally requires one now, you can parry an incoming attack by blocking at the perfect moment. Lovely stuff. Shit. While the moveset itself is fairly basic, the combat feels responsive. William does exactly what you tell him to do, which sounds like an extremely low bar, but you would be amazed how many action games fail to clear it. Most importantly, dodging interrupts practically anything you're currently doing. You can be halfway through swinging your sword, realise that a large angry man is about to cave your skull in, press dodge, and William will immediately abandon the attack and move out of the way. None of that, you already committed to an animation 12 business days ago, so unfortunately you will have to accept death. You press dodge, he dodges. Beautiful! This makes combat feel smooth and dependable from the beginning. When you take damage, it generally feels like your fault. If you're paying enough attention, and are good enough at the game, you can clear whole levels without taking a single lick of damage. But There is also no getting around the fact that the basic combat is incredibly simple. Most encounters involve cycling through the same handful of attacks while dodging or parrying whenever an enemy eventually remembers that they're also holding a weapon. I enjoyed it because the controls felt good and the steady evolving builds gave those basic attacks more spectacle. But I can absolutely understand why some players might feel the actual swordplay is repetitive. There are only so many times you can perform the same 3-hit combo before William begins to look less like a legendary warrior and more like an animatronic performing its scheduled routine. I tell you what though, getting a new weapon is amazing, because this game understands something that brings me an unreasonable amount of happiness. I unlocked a new weapon and prepared myself for the usual video game reward of, this is the same object, however, it does 7 more damage, and get this, we painted it brown. But no, equipping the new weapon actually changed my moveset. It added another attack to the standard light combo, and replaced the heavy finisher at the end of the light-heavy sequence. You might be thinking, wow, is the bar really that low? Yes. After years of games handing me 15 visually different weapons that all control like the same metal stick, discovering one that provides new attacks fills my heart with genuine joy. A weapon should not only make the number beside damage slightly higher, it should change the way I fight. Give me a new combo, give me a different finisher, give me a reason to equip it beyond the fact that the menu bar has an extra green sliver. As for the other playable heroes, I've only unlocked one of the 2 you can unlock, so I can't judge the gameplay of the big guy with the hammer. But Little Miss Square Up over here is awesome. She uses her fists, and on one of them is a sharp shield like Captain America in Infinity War. She's fast, agile, she's great. But her health pool is a lot smaller. You die much quicker, but the sacrifice for that is you get to beat the fucking brakes off of people. But besides that, the skill upgrades are also really cool, and you can get some pretty dope combinations. During one of my runs, I picked up an upgrade that caused an explosion at the end of my dash, which was already delightful, but I also had another perk that added a blast of fire to my dash attack. These 2 effects combined transformed William into a ballistic missile. At this point, I didn't even need to properly fight most enemies. I would just dash into a crowd, swing the sword once, and everyone nearby would immediately become non-existent. There's no intelligent analysis here. My brain saw several dozen people explode because I pressed one button, released the happy chemicals, and demanded that I do it again. Even if you are a ballistic missile, you still can die. Dying, yeah, it does feel punishing, really punishing sometimes, but it also feels great to restart and see the new builds you can make. Losing a powerful build makes failure actually mean something. It encourages you to learn the enemy attacks, improve your parrying, stop charging in blindly into every encounter, and become generally better at the game. So starting again can sting, especially after finding a combination that felt genuinely unstoppable. But that frustration also makes the next run more exciting. You know how powerful you could become, and now you have the joy of making it back to that point. This leads me nicely into the difficulty, because most of the normal day-to-day game isn't hard. The bosses are where most of my runs go to die. The occasional mini-boss has managed to send me back to the village with my kilt between my legs, but almost every time I've lost a run, it has been against the final boss of the map. Up until that point, everything is going beautifully. I've built William into a walking natural disaster, my army is slicing through anything even slightly British, and I'm beginning to believe that nothing on this island can stop me. Then this motherfucker appears, and he absolutely rails me. All of my carefully selected upgrades suddenly mean very little when this enormous bastard begins removing my health bar in industrial-sized pieces. The final boss is also where the punishment of losing a run feels the strongest. Dying halfway through is frustrating, but at least you haven't reached the finish line yet. Getting all the way to the final encounter, surviving every battle before it, and then being folded into a pretzel means you lose the run while being painfully aware of how close you were. It's basically the game allowing you to see the exit before slamming the door on your fingers. But that also made me want to immediately start another campaign. Not necessarily because I was enjoying the failure, but because I had developed a deeply unhealthy personal vendetta against one fictional fatty. The problem isn't that the final boss is difficult. Bosses are supposed to be difficult, but the frustration comes from the difficulty spike. For most of your time playing this game, you'll breeze through all of the levels. But once you get to the boss, it's immediately turned into a FromSoft game. He is just so aggressive, and every attack deals a massive chunk of damage. And while you're desperately trying to dodge his rapid assault, the normal soldiers are still wandering around trying to stab you in the ass. Because apparently, fighting the enormous boss wasn't enough. I also need to keep an eye on Kevin and his little butter knife. Fuck off, Kevin! Throughout the normal levels in the game, and even the mini-bosses, the game asks you normal questions like, you remember how to dodge, right? You remember how to block, right? But the minute you get near the final boss of the map, the game asks,
have you made peace with your god?
There is very little beforehand that adequately prepares you for how aggressive he is, how much damage he deals, or how little breathing room you'll receive once the fight begins. Excellent. 30 minutes of preparation dismantled in the time it takes to microwave a Rustler's burger. Thankfully, losing a run does not mean you have achieved absolutely nothing. Especially during the opening hours, you earn enough resources to buy at least one permanent upgrade between practically every attempt. So even when the final boss slimes your ass, you still return to the village with something useful. But let's return to the start of the game for a moment. Because at that point, your army feels mostly decorative. They'll split off into little groups and have their own tiny battles in the background, whilst you deal with everything that actually matters. But I mean, look at them go! At least their morale appears high. While they're gently tapping one enemy to death over the course of several working days, you're 10 meters away packing an entire battalion's shit in all by yourself. But that gradually changes as you invest in them. You'll be able to bring more commanders into each battle and eventually unlock the ability to order your army to target a specific enemy. And that final upgrade makes a massive difference. Instead of your soldiers distributing themselves evenly across every peasant in the postcode, you can point at the giant bastard currently ruining your day and request that several dozen people jump him. In short, the commanders bring more troops, your upgrades make those troops considerably more dangerous, and battles that originally felt like William doing all the work eventually become a proper group effort. You can increase your blocking stamina and health and shit, improve William's abilities, or unlock the option to bring more commanders into battle. Those commanders then bring their own group of soldiers, meaning that one upgrade can noticeably increase the size of your army during the next run. This is great because you return slightly tougher, better prepared, and surrounded by considerably more expendable employees. These improvements are also great because you get immediate proof that you're stronger. I'm not returning with 0.3% increase to my resilience. I'm returning with 20 more men. The length of a campaign is a bit difficult to judge because Tears of Metal and other games in this genre give you a bit of control over the pacing. I'd estimate that reaching the end of the first area takes about 20 minutes from a baseline normal standard, but even that can change depending on how you approach the map. After each encounter, you obviously choose where you want to go next. You can make a beeline towards the final boss, arrive with 3 upgrades and the confidence of an American who has a factually incorrect statement, or you can crawl across the entire map, completing every battle, visiting every merchant and investigating every mystery encounter and get yourself shredded before the boss fight. As for how long later areas take, I couldn't tell you. I haven't beaten the second one yet. The battles themselves, though, remain satisfying, but the locations do begin repeating fairly quickly. There simply aren't that many arenas in each part of the map, so after a few campaigns, you'll start recognizing places you've already covered in blood several times before. That repetition isn't necessarily disastrous in a roguelike. Reusing locations is fine, providing the game keeps changing what happens inside of them, and Tears of Metal does a decent effort there. I'm still discovering new mystery encounters and unexpected interactions several runs in, which is exactly what you want from this genre. Like, if you're gonna make me go to the same place twice, put a little goblin guy in the corner somewhere. I will also point out, though, that you do want this to some degree in a roguelike, because the point of these games is to get so familiar with everything that you just blast through the areas and get to the boss, / finish the game faster and faster each time. The visual design is easily one of the strongest parts of the entire game. Practically everything on the screen makes my eyeballs orgasm. Even the introduction that plays when you first open the game is just gorgeous. It uses this brilliantly animated comic book style, with rough line work, bold colours and artwork that just oozes with passion for the style. You can immediately tell that Paper Cult didn't simply choose this art style because they just wanted it to look unique. The entire game has been designed around it, from the characters and environments to the effects, menus, and animated sequences. It just makes everything look like a comic panel. It's fucking gorgeous. I genuinely don't think Tears of Metal would be as good with a realistic visual style. You could keep the exact same combat progression and enemy counts, but if everyone looked like a moderately damp man rendered in Unreal Engine, so much of the game's personality would disappear. The blood effects are especially good. Blood coats your character, splashes across the ground, and gradually paints the environment as the battle continues. It's also noticeably more vibrant than most of the surrounding colours, which makes every hit stand out and gives the combat even more aggression. I think my biggest criticism is similar to the problem I had with the new Resident Evil 9 DLC. The power-ups just don't yet feel quite crazy enough. Tears of Metal is already much better in this regard. Exploding at the end of a dodge and throwing fire across the battlefield with a sword swing is objectively fucking awesome. I'm not sitting here watching a number increase from 12 to 14 and pretending I can feel a difference. These upgrades have visible effects and can genuinely change the way you fight. It's immediately better than the Leon Must Die Forever DLC, but I still think the game could push them further. This is a world where a massive meteorite has crashed into the ground, people are mining it to create supernatural weapons and armor, and the first major boss is a giant demonic bastard who looks like he eats lesser demons for protein. I think we've earned the right to abandon subtlety. Give me an upgrade where the final attack of a combo makes my sword enormous, massively increasing its range and allowing me to cleave through an entire crowd. Is it excessive? Yes. Would it completely destroy any remaining attachment to reality? Also yes. But I'm already exploding when I dodge. The realism ship has sailed, hit an iceberg, and burst into flames. Let me find upgrades that radically transform individual attacks rather than only adding another elemental effect. Make a heavy strike split the ground open. Give me a sword so unnecessarily large that the character should require planning permissions to swing it. The foundations are already there, and some of the combinations are brilliant. I just want the developers to take the most ridiculous upgrades currently in the game and use those as the starting point for whatever comes next. This is early access. Now is the perfect time to make everything irresponsibly stupid. But just like the same criticism I had for RE9, I haven't gotten through the entire game yet, so this point could be completely wrong. If anyone in the comments knows it's wrong, let me know. Actually no, but building off of what I just said, I feel like the upgrades aren't frequent enough. I mean, again, I've not made it to the second and third areas, so maybe they do become a bit more frequent, but in the first map, the first area, it feels like you get maybe 4 upgrades at most before you hit the boss. And some of them are kinda shit. Like a lot of them will just be something like, oh, whenever you block, something happens. But it's only a tiny little thing. And it's like, no, by the time I reach the boss, I should be fucking like creating black holes and shit. I need to be able to get to a point where by the time I reach the boss, I fucking shred him. So, would I recommend Tears of Metal? Absolutely. If you already enjoy roguelikes or Musou games, this is something you should at least try. It takes the enormous battles and power fantasy of a Warriors game, combines them with the evolving builds and permanent progression of a roguelike, and wraps everything inside one of the most visually distinct games I've played in recent years. But I also think this could be a really good introduction to both genres. The combat is simple enough that you don't need 17 fingers and a university degree to understand it, while the roguelike systems gradually introduce you to build crafting and the uniquely devastating experience of losing everything because a large man hit you twice. It's accessible without being completely brainless, and there's enough permanent progression that even failed runs usually leave you with something useful. Obviously, if you have Game Pass, there's even less reason not to try it. It's already included with the subscription, and the download is only around 4 gigabytes. 4 gigabytes! There are Call of Duty menu updates larger than this entire game. You could install Tears of Metal, complete a run, and get railed by the final boss before most modern games have finished compiling their shaders. But is it worth buying? I don't know, I didn't buy it. It's only around 20 quid on Steam, and based on what I've played, I think that is absolutely a fair price. Yeah, the locations repeat, the combat begins quite basic and honestly stays that way. The final bosses create an enormous difficulty spike, and I think the power-ups could become far more ridiculous. But the central idea already works. The battles are satisfying, progression makes failure worthwhile, the build system can produce some brilliant combinations, new weapons actually change your attacks, and the visual design gives me, and will give you, repeated eyeball orgasms. That sentence is going on the box. Tears of Metal is already a good game. More importantly, it feels like the foundation of something that could become genuinely fantastic as Paper Cult adds more heroes, locations, encounters, and increasingly irresponsible supernatural abilities. So yes, I recommend it. Gather your army, sharpen your weapon, and prepare to lose 40 minutes of progress because Kevin stabbed you in the arse during a boss fight.